subscribe and click the bell icon to turn on notifications.
We've made the files the instructor uses in this tutorial available for free. Just click the link below in the video details to get these.
Hello everyone and welcome back to this course on Excel for Business Analysts. We've made it all the way down to section 4, and in this section we're going to be talking about how to make better decisions using logical functions. And more specifically in this first module, we're going to concentrate on one of the most popular logical functions, and that is the if function. Now, if you're looking for the if function on the ribbon, you'll find it under the Formulas tab in the Functions library underneath Logical. This is where you have a list of all of the functions that belong to that logical functions group. Now, if you're not entirely sure what a logical function is, don't worry too much. I'm going to explain it from the very beginning. So what I have on the screen here is a very basic spreadsheet. It is a list of tech sales for a technology company called Microworld. And you can see in column A, we have the product that they sell. We have the customer. We have the date. We have the item cost, the number of items, and the total cost. And what you'll see is that the total cost, if we look up in that formula bar, is basically D7, the item cost, multiplied by E7, the number of items. That is how we get to our total cost figure. And what we want to do here is we need to work out the shipping and the total. And in order to do that, we're going to use the if function. Now, when it comes to working out the shipping, we have some useful information just above. So you can see here, it says that there is no shipping charge for orders over $1,500, but for everything else, there is a 2% of the total cost shipping charge. Now, if we just jump in here and type in if and open a bracket, you'll see the arguments that we have. The first thing that's highlighted is the logical test. And then essentially, depending on if that logical test is true, you get one value. If the result of the logical test is false, you get another one. So taking a look at our example here, what would be our logical test? Well, we know that there is no shipping charge for orders over $1,500, but there is for anything under $1,500. So our logical test is going to be if the total cost, F7, is greater than or equal to $1,500. And you'll find that with a lot of logical functions, you're going to use those operators, the greater than, less than, equal to, so on and so forth. So that is our test. Is the total cost greater than or equal to $1,500? Let's press comma and move on to our next argument. So now we want to say, what do we want Excel to do if that is true? So if the total cost is greater than or equal to $1,500, what do we want to do? Well, I can see here that there is no shipping charge for orders over $1,500. So I'm going to say I want Excel to do nothing. Comma. What do we do if that logical test is false? So if the total cost is less than $1,500, what do we need Excel to do? Well, if it is less than, I want Excel to work out what 2% of that total cost is and use that as the shipping charge. So we're going to say F7 multiplied by 2% and close our bracket. Let's hit enter and see what we get. So I've got the first number inputted there. It's showing me $29. And what I'm actually going to do is just apply some accounting format to this column. And I can double click the autofill handle to copy that formula down. And what we should see, and it's a very nice quick way to be able to do a visual check, is that anything that's equal to or greater than 1,500 should have no shipping charge. So I can see here where we have a dash that one is over 1,500. And I can see as I scroll down that appears to be true. Everything else that's under 1,500, we've worked out what 2% of the total cost is, and we've got that as our shipping fee. So just to recap again, we have logical test, value if true, value if false. And our final calculation in the totals column is a very straightforward sum calculation. So we're simply going to add the total cost, F7, to the shipping cost, G7. Close the bracket and hit enter. Once again, I'm going to apply some accounting formatting to this column, and I'm going to double click to copy that down. And now we have all of our figures. So very quickly, we've been able to work out everything we need for this particular data set. Hopefully that explains how if works a little bit more. We're going to move on to some more examples of if, so please join me in the next module for that. Hello everyone and welcome back to this course on Excel for Business Analysts. We're down in section 4 where we're taking a look at logical functions, and in the previous module we took our first look at how to utilize that if function. In this module we're going to do another example of if on slightly different data. So in front of me here I have some employee data, so this might be for somebody who works in HR. And what we have in column A is a list of employee names. We have the building that they work in and their department. We have the hire date, the years that they've been employed, their salary, and then they've been given a job rating. So this job rating might be something that's been generated from a yearly appraisal, and each staff member has been ranked from 1 to 5. And depending on what they've been ranked determines if they get a bonus or not. And we're going to utilize the if function in a couple of different ways to work out who is going to receive a bonus. So what we're going to say here is that anybody who has achieved a job rating of 5 is going to get a bonus of $3,000. So I'm going to click in cell H2 and we're going to fire up our if function. And if you remember from previously, we need to first state our logical test. So in this case, our logical test is if the job rating, G2, is equal to 5, comma, what happens or what do we want Excel to do if that is in fact true? Well, if the employee has a job rating of 5, they're going to get a bonus of $3,000. If they have anything that isn't 5, they're going to get absolutely nothing, which is a little bit unfair, but there we go. Close off the bracket, hit enter, and now if I copy this down by double-clicking the autofill handle, we'll see that we have 3,000 listed wherever there is a job rating of 5. So it's very easy for us to then see which staff members have received that bonus. And once again, I'm going to highlight this column and I'm just going to apply some currency formatting. So now let's take this on a stage further. I'm going to double click to jump back into my if function. And what we're going to do here is instead of having just a 0 or a dash, we're going to replace that with some text. So I'm going to remove the 0, and what I'm going to say is that if the job rating is equal to 5, I just want it to say in the cell bonus. And when you're dealing with text within a formula, you must always put it in quote marks. Comma, what do we want it to say if the logical test is false? Well, I want it to say no bonus. And hit enter. And now if I double click to copy that down, you can see we get those results. So essentially what I could do if I wanted to quickly analyze this data and just get a list of everybody who's going to receive a bonus, I could do that very quickly by combining this with some filters. So I'm going to jump up to my data ribbon, make sure that I'm clicked somewhere in this heading row, and I'm going to click on the filter button. This applies these little filters to each of the heading rows, and what I can then do is filter just for bonus. Click on OK, and it's going to show me all of the people who are going to receive a bonus. Now, so far in the two examples that I've shown you, I've been hard coding values into this particular formula. So I hard coded in $3,000 into that if formula. which means if the bonus amount changes, I'm going to have to go into my formula and I'm going to have to change it. What I could do is, if I wanted to, have my bonus listed somewhere else. So maybe I could have bonus just here. And then underneath it can say 3,000. And I'm going to apply some formatting to that. And instead of actually hard coding 3,000 into the formula, I can then utilize cell references. So let's do our formula again, equals if, open bracket, our logical test is if the job rating is equal to 5, comma, if that's true, then they're going to get a bonus of 3,000, but we're going to utilize the cell reference instead, J4. Now remember, because we're going to copy this formula down, we want to make sure that we fix this cell J4 so Excel doesn't try to move down one cell. So we're going to do that by pressing our F4 key to add dollar symbols in front of the row and the column. Comma. If they don't have a job rating of 5, then they're going to get 0. And then of course we can copy that down and we get our result of 3,000, but the difference being, if I want to very quickly update this bonus to 3,500, I just need to change it in one place and all of my figures are going to update. The final example I'm going to show you in this module is if we want to maybe set the bonus as a percentage of their salary. Again, if we jump into cell H2 and say equals if, open bracket, our logical test is exactly the same. If the job rating is equal to 5, comma, if that's true, then they're going to get a bonus of 15% of their salary. So I want to say salary, which is F2, multiplied by 15%. And as I was saying previously, I've hard-coded the 15% into the formula, but you could very simply have the 15% listed over at the side in a different cell and utilize the cell reference. Comma, if they don't have a job rating of 5, they are going to get nothing once more. And we can go in and copy this down, and there we can see our figures. So a few different ways there that you can utilize the if function in various different formats, utilize text, utilize cell references, etc. in order to extract the results that you need. In the next module, we're going to move on to something called nested if statements. So please join me for that. Hello everyone and welcome back to this course on Excel for business analysts. We're down in section 4 where we've been looking at logical functions and in particular the if function, one of the most popular functions in Excel and something that you really need to wrap your head around if you work in business analysis. Now in the previous couple of modules we've taken a look at some basic examples of if and how you can utilize it in different ways. In this module, I want to move on from that idea and just show you how you can construct what we call a nested if statement. Now, when we say a nested if statement, what we essentially mean is an if statement or multiple if statements within an if statement. Now, that might sound a little bit confusing at this stage, but hopefully this very simple example using the data we used in the previous module will make it all a lot clearer. So once again, just a reminder of our data. We have employee names and we have the building department that they work in. We have their hire date. We have the years that they've been employed, their salary and their job rating. And in the previous example, we were giving out bonuses for all of the employees that had a job rating of 5. Now it seems a little bit stingy to only give employees that have a job rating of 5 an annual bonus. So what we're going to do is we're going to dish out some more money using nested ifs. So I'm going to jump into cell H2 and we're going to start off with our equals if function again. Now our logical test is going to be the same. So if the job rating is equal to 5, comma, and I'm going to start out by hard coding in what the bonus is going to be if that logical test is true. And just to keep things consistent, we're going to stick with 3,000. comma. Now this is where the nested part comes in, because what I want to do now is say if the job rating is 4, the employee is going to receive $1,500. So instead of providing a false argument at this stage, I'm going to add in another if and open the bracket. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing. If the job rating is equal to 4 this time, then that employee is going to get $1,500, comma. Let's add in another one. If, open bracket, the job rating is equal to 3, then the employee is going to get $900 bonus. And we can carry on going. So let's do one more, comma. If the job rating is equal to 2, then they're going to get $500 bonus, comma. And what I'm going to say is that if somebody's got a job rating of 1, then they're not going to get anything. So we're going to say comma, 0 on the end. Now with these longer nested if statements, what you need to remember is that for each bracket that you've opened, you need to close off as many at the end. So I can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 open brackets, so I need to close off 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and hit enter. Now the first one is showing me nothing, and that is a job rating of 1, so that appears to be correct. I'm going to copy this formula down, and what I should see is that I have figures filled in for anyone with a job rating of 2, 3, 4, or 5, and whenever the job rating is 1, there is no bonus. So that appears to be working very nicely using those nested if statements. And as you can imagine, if you have a lot of data, these can get pretty long. And in the next module, I'm going to show you a way that you can kind of shorten this up a little bit. But it's really important that you understand this concept of nesting functions inside other functions. Now, of course, as we saw previously, we could also utilize cell references to construct our nested if statements. So what I've done here is I've just added a little table over at the side that shows me the ratings 1 to 5 and the bonus for each of those ratings. So instead of hard coding these numbers into the formula, which makes them a little bit more difficult to change, I can just reference the cell from this little table instead. So let's take a look at how that would look. We're just going to say equals if, open bracket, and logical test is the job rating. If that's equal to 5, then they're going to get a bonus of 3,000, which is cell K8. And remember, we need to lock that in place by pressing the F4 key to make it absolute, because we're going to copy this down. Comma, if, open bracket, the job rating is equal to 4, then they're going to get a bonus of 1,500 and lock that in place with the F4 key. And I could carry on going as I did before, but in this case, I'm just going to leave it there. I'm going to do my final argument. For anybody else who hasn't got a job rating of 4 or 5, they're going to get nothing in this case. And I need to close off 2 brackets because I've opened 2. Enter, and then double click to autofill that down. And of course, as we've seen before, if these numbers now change, everything is going to automatically update. So let's change the bonus for a job rating of 4 to 1,700, hit enter, and all my numbers have updated very simply. Hopefully those examples have demystified nested if statements a little bit more for you. In the next module, I'm going to talk to you about the newer IF-S function, which really makes nested if statements a lot more concise and a lot shorter. So please join me in the next module for that. Hello everyone, and welcome back to this course on Excel for Business Analysts. We're down in section 4, where we've been taking a look at how to make better decisions using the if function. And in the previous modules, we've seen a couple of basic examples of how to utilize if. And we've also looked at how to utilize nested ifs, that is, if statements within if statements. And if you remember, we had a very small example, but when working with nested ifs, the formula can become quite long and quite cumbersome. Imagine if you had a lot more data and a lot more if statements that you need to add in, that formula would become extremely long. So what we're going to do in this module is we're going to take a look at Excel's new alternative to working with nested ifs. And that is the IFS or the IFS function. I like to call it IFS to differentiate from regular ifs. Now, one thing to note here is that the new IFS function is not available in all versions of Excel. So if you have Excel 2016, 2019 for Office 365, then you should find that you have access to the IFS function. If you're not sure which version you're using, a very quick way of checking if you have access to the function is just to click in a cell, type it in, and if you can see it listed underneath, then you are good to go. If you don't have this function, then you will need to use nested ifs, as I demonstrated in the last module, until you upgrade and have access to this new function. So let's take a look at how the IFS function works. So I have an example on my screen here, and this is just some test results for an English exam. And I have these student names, I have their score, and what I want to determine here is whether they passed, failed, or if they need to retake. And just above, I have the threshold, the pass mark they need to achieve. So essentially, if they score above 75%, they have passed. If they score below 75%, they have failed. And what we're going to say is if they have achieved exactly 75%, they're going to need to retake the exam. So I'm going to use the IFS function in order to populate these empty cells in column C with the result. So let's jump into our first cell, C6, and I'm going to type in equals ifs and open my bracket. Now the difference with IFS as opposed to nested ifs, if you look at the arguments underneath, we're only required to provide a logical test and a value if true. We don't need to provide a value if false, and that essentially makes this formula a lot more concise to read and a lot more concise to construct. So let's type in our first logical test. We're going to say if the score, which is in cell B6, is greater than 75, and we're going to lock that cell because we're going to copy this down by pressing the F4 key, comma. If that is true, then the student is going to pass, comma. You'll see now it moves straight on to logical test 2. We haven't had to provide what we want Excel to do if it's false. So let's do the next logical test. If the score is less than 75, and we're going to lock that by pressing F4, comma, we're going to say fail. Now for the time being, I'm just going to do those two. I'm going to close off my bracket, I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to double click my autofill handle to copy that down. So we can see here we have anything under 75 is listed as a fail, and anything over is listed as a pass. But take a look at this score here, which is dead on 75. Currently that's telling us NA, it's giving us an error. And that is because we haven't told Excel what we want it to do if the score is 75. All we've said is if it's above 75, it's a pass. If it's below, it's a fail. Now this is fairly easy to solve. What I could do is just jump back into my formula, click on the end, and provide another logical test. So I could say if the score is equal to 75 and lock that in place, then I want it to say retake and hit enter. And now if I send that down, I get exactly what I'm looking for. Now there is another way that we could deal with this. Now it's perfectly fine to do it that way. And because I have a fairly small data set, it's very easy just to add in that third logical test. However, there is a slightly different way that we could do this. I'm just going to remove that last logical test that we added in. And instead of actually providing that logical test, I'm just going to type the word true, comma, and I'm going to say retake. Hit enter, and if I copy that down, I should find that my results don't change. So why is this working? What is this true argument, and what exactly is it doing? Well, the way that this formula works is that Excel is looking for the first true condition in order to produce a result. So if we take this first score, for example, 67, essentially Excel starts to run through this formula looking for the first true result, and then it returns whatever text that corresponds to that. So if I just highlight this first logical test, and what we can do here is just calculate this formula so we can see the results. You can either press the F9 key, or on the formulas ribbon, you can choose the Calculate Now option. You can see that this first logical test calculates to false for this first score. So what Excel does, it says, okay, that's a false. It moves on to the next calculation. So if we highlight the next logical test and do F9 or Calculate Now, it finds true and so returns the result of fail. And it basically goes through all of these and does exactly the same process. It's looking for the first true. When it finds it, it will produce the result that relates to it. Now with this one here, where it's dead on 75, let's double click. Let's highlight and do F9 or Calculate Now. We have a false. It moves across to the next one. We still have a false. And so because we've hard-coded true as our third logical test, it's going to produce true. So this is a nice kind of catch-all option to add into your formula. Now just to finish off this module on IFS, one little thing you might want to do to make these stand out a little bit more is combine this with conditional formatting in order to maybe highlight the results which are showing as fail, or maybe highlight the results that are showing as pass. So let me very quickly show you how you can do that. I'm going to start out by highlighting all of my results. I'm going to go up to the Home ribbon and across to Conditional Formatting, and I'm going to create a new rule. I'm going to select a rule type. I'm going to say Format only cells that contain, and then because my cells contain text, I'm going to make sure I say specific text, containing, and let's say the word pass. I want all of those results formatted in a green color. Click on OK, click on OK again, and now I can very easily see all of the people that have passed this test. You could, of course, go through and create another rule to highlight the results that are fail, or maybe the ones that are retake as well, but that's just a nice way of combining conditional formatting with IFS in order to analyze your data a little bit more effectively. That's it for this module. I will see you in the next one.
If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. To get the files the instructor used in this tutorial and follow along, click over there. And click over there to watch more videos on YouTube from Simon Sez IT.